Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us once again in celebrating ImageOut's 30th anniversary. And as we continue our virtual Q&As for this festival, we are so honored to have the writer, director, producer, and lead star of Maybe Someday, Michelle Ellen. Did I
Elin,
just
yeah.
I just realized I'm like
No,
I've
it's
never said
okay.
your name out loud before
Right,
in your
yeah.
presence anyway. Um, and also one of the actors that Michelle worked on the film. Please welcome Shayla Cook.
Hi.
Thanks for having us. Great to
Thank
be here.
you.
Now this is great because although we are hybrid and we're back and we're hybrid, but we're back to physical screenings, we haven't moved on with having guests in person. Um, it's just that we don't want people to not feel comfortable about people coming from out of town. So I guess this is the next best thing, right? And the good thing about this is we could be chatting with anyone from anywhere and it will be
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. So maybe someday, um, I know, Michelle, you've been doing a lot of films forever. So what makes maybe someday different from your previous films as far as maybe the inspiration that you took on to tell the story or even the narrative? What sets it apart from your earlier works?
Yeah, so my first three movies, and I think they all played at Image Out, was Butch Jamie, Heterosexual Jill, and S&M Sally. And so, and Shayla's actually in the last two, Heterosexual Jill and S&M Sally as well. And so all three of those are comedies. They're just meant to be fun. There's some good themes in them, but with Maybe Someday, I wanted to take on a new kind of challenge. So originally, when I approached the script, I was like, I wanted to do a drama, a straight drama originally with no comedy, because I wanted to find new ways to keep the audience engaged, right? Because I felt like I got to a point where I felt, like I could make people laugh, and as long as they were laughing, that they were going to be engaged in the story. But there's obviously other ways. There's empathizing with the characters, being involved in the story, and so I wanted to delve into telling a story where I basically wasn't using comedy as it to fall back on, right? And of course, in the process of writing, the comedy did find its way into the story, and the story I think is so much better for it, right? Because
Yes.
it rounds it out, and I think it breaks up that tension with the comedic release, and I think the audience kind of needs that and wants that. So it evolved that way. But in terms of the inspiration, I mean, the story focuses on my character separating from her wife and moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, and that's all loosely inspired by my own real life divorce and cross country move. And the character that Shayla plays is high school best friend that I used to be secretly in love with. We haven't seen each other in 20 years. I stay with her for a length of time while I'm getting back up on my feet. And then I befriend this gay man while I'm in town also. So it's those three main relationships. And all those relationships and people, again, have also been loosely inspired by my real life, and then taking creative liberties to kind of put it together into this movie.
For Shayla, how did you get involved with the project? I mean, I
Um,
know you've worked with Michelle in the two other films previously, but um, it doesn't mean you're automatically cast in all of her films, right?
no, it doesn't mean I have an automatic into all of Michelle Elam's projects going forward. Um, no, but in this case, she did approach me with the script. So yeah, I was really blessed to have her write the part, thinking of me. And then she decided that she did want to go forward with me, and so that was great. It's kind of an actor's dream, right?
Yeah. Was there anything about the script that uh, did it for you as far as, oh yeah, I'd like to do this?
um, yeah, I really love how down to earth and grounded the writing is, and the characters and slice of life and all of that. I I have been working a lot in more broad, spectacular projects, particularly in theater for the last decade or so. And so to have something that's so grounded in reality and emotion and nuance is really fulfilling as an actor. I love to dig into a character's psyche and what makes them tick. And so just playing what felt like a really full, fleshed out person going through a really common experience so many people go through, and having connections with other actors and characters. And I don't know, I really live for that stuff. So yeah, it was a refreshing thing to have come to me, and I'm really grateful for it.
Well, you did mention about your character being a little more grounded. Um, what I noticed in the film, Michelle, is there's a bit more maturity to the characters. Not
Mhm.
meaning old, but they're a little more experienced in life. So as their relationships have been more lived in and more exper yeah, more experience. So is that just you gaining more experience as you navigate life? Um,
Yeah, I think that that's definitely a part of it. I mean, when I made Butch Jamie, I was in my late 20s, and the other two, I was in my 30s, and now I'm in my early 40s. And so this movie really was sort of like, even though when I went through my similar experience, my own divorce, I was in my late 20s, this was definitely supposed to be like sort of a midlife kind of thing, a midlife kind of journey. So that was definitely sort of the approach to that. And, you know, as you know, there's a lot of flashbacks woven throughout the movie. So it's also kind of like reflecting back on like where you've come from and where you're potentially going, and sort of being at sort of like this crossroads of like what's next for me at this point of my life.
is this the first? Sorry, is this the first movie where you've dealt with a lot of flashbacks? I'm trying to think back to your other movies.
Yeah, this is really the first one. It's funny because like when most people, when you take a screenwriting class, they tell you not to do flashbacks, which is funny because a lot of really great movies have flashbacks, but for beginning writers, they're afraid you're going to use them as a crutch. And so, you know, for the first few movies, like how can I tell this story in present day, right? And not rely on that. And that's actually the approach I had to this initially. Like the first draft of the script was all present day. Jess was in the movie, but it focused heavily on my friendship with Tommy, and we didn't even really meet Lily, which is my wife that I'm separating from, and Lily existed through the texts and the phone call and in Jay's mind. And through the course of developing the story, I mean, you know, flashing back and showing the Lily relationship and showing Jay and Jess when they're younger in high school rounds out, I think, so much of the subtext and the emotional subtext of the movie so that we can appreciate what's happening in present day more because of it. So that really opened up the movie, I think, adding the flashbacks to it.
Yeah, and I think it said a lot about the characters and the relationships. You really got a lot from going back in time to 1997 or what have you. I think
Yeah.
that's was and understanding um, the relationship now that Jay has with Jess. So I think it was good. My next question is so what I love about this movie as well is it wasn't just about a romantic relationship. Um, it's as much about a buddy relationship with
Mm-hmm.
you and Tommy, which I don't think I've seen in your other movies as well. Uh, Especially a female to male relationship as
Mm-hmm.
friends. Although I think both are kind of non-binary in a way. Um, uh, was that something that you wanted in the beginning for the movie when you
Yeah,
were
it
writing?
was. I mean, in the other movies, I do have the David character. So there's Jamie and David, and they have a friendship, and so it's definitely there of like the lesbian gay man sort of friendship, but it's not the focus of the movie by any means. And so with this movie, and I think that especially the gay men that see this movie, I think really appreciate that because you don't see that a lot in terms of like having that be such a large part of the movie, of this friendship. And for me, that was actually my way into the story initially, as sort of like this idea of, because I have a lot of really important gay men in my life, right? And so when I was heartbroken and I wasn't really ready to meet, other women, that was a really nice, safe, platonic friendship that I could have without worrying about where is this going and are there feelings here. It was very cut and dry. And so I liked the idea of like that Tommy helps Jay heal and open up from this breakup and is kind of a safe haven in a way. And that's why Shayla's character, Jess, I mean, there's this complicated history there of Jay used to be secretly in love with her. And even though Jay is sort of like, grappling with that and putting that to rest in present day, it's too complicated. And so that's why, Jess's character is such an important part of the movie, but Jay has this wall up because it's too vulnerable to let that down with somebody that you could potentially have a romantic relationship with, that who's straight, and Shayla's character straight, and isn't going to happen with.
Yeah. So as a writer, are you the type of writer who comes to set where everything is written down and you're pretty much set with what you want to do, or are you the type that still develop the storylines, and do you take input from your actors like Shayla um, in the process? And I also want to ask Shayla if was there any part of your character, Jess, that um, came from you, as an actress?
Do you want me to go first? I felt like there were two questions. Sorry.
Sorry.
Sure.
No, that's
if you
okay.
want to.
So was there anything that came from me? Yeah, I am a mother to a young person, and so I could really identify with the protectiveness of Jess, and like, how do I move forward being a fully formed human and a good example for my kid, but also protect them from all the pain. So Jess is kind of navigating. She's on the other side of the roughness, which I've been through breakups of long terms. And so, yeah, I relate in how that changes you and how you have to rediscover your identity. So her like woo woo side and like going through the cuddle workshops and all of that, like I can identify with that search for yourself and connection to other people, but also maintaining like a safe and secure environment for your child. And I also see her desire to reconnect to Jay, who's an important person and who she was before her marriage, because Jess married her high school boyfriend. She basically went from Jay being the most important relationship in her life, even though for her it wasn't romantic, to Paul being the most important relationship in her life. So it's kind of her coming back to herself. And I do understand that journey of coming back to self. I am in my 40s. You could say I'm still having a midlife crisis. So I do identify with a lot of her. I don't know how much of her came from me as far as Michelle's writing goes. Possibly the child, possibly some of the more unusual aspects of my personality. I don't know. Michelle would have to talk to that. But I do identify with a lot of Jess's journey.
Yeah, and in terms of like collaborating, I mean, so since I had Shaela in mind for that part early on, I did give Shaela early drafts of the script and we kind of met and chatted with it a bit. And then after I cast the rest of the actors, we did a reading and I was very open of inquiring about script feedback from the actors and to make it a collaborative process. And then when we got on set, I mean, the majority of the movie is scripted, but there are scenes and moments that are improvised, right? And so there's a flashback scene with young Jay and young Jess where they're getting stoned. And originally I kind of just wanted them like improvise that to find their way into the scene. But then it was so good, we just used most of the improvised stuff and cut most of what I wrote for the scene. So that's probably the best example. And a lot of the stuff between Jay and Tommy, because Charlie as an actor is a very spontaneous in the moment actor. And so I wanted, and I like that. Like, I don't like to over rehearse the actors. And so a lot of sort of like, most of the stuff is scripted, but there's some banter and some jokes and whatever to keep it sort of fresh and spontaneous between us.
You mentioned Charlie who played Tommy, and I feel like, just judging from what his output is in the movie, I felt like just letting him loose could get really crazy easily. As far as doing improv and stuff, I feel like you probably have to wrangle him in with a script.
Right, right. Yeah, it's actually funny how similar he was to his character too, because I didn't know him at all. We auditioned and found him, but he used to do stand-up comedy, he does drag, he does like all the things that Tommy does.
Yeah.
He says he does everything except camp, is what he likes to say. So he definitely was very in sync with the character.
So now, just like in your previous films, you produced, you wrote, you directed, you starred in this film as well. Has this become your comfort level when making a film? Or is this one of those things where, you know what, I'll just write things for me, or the stories that I'm interested in? Um, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so are you saying, just to kind of recap, you're saying like, am I mostly interested in writing stories that speak to me, or?
Well, but I was just wondering if um, that's your comfort level, being in control of everything.
I see, I see.
Or even the narrative that you're telling. Um,
To be
yes.
in control of the narrative, you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like, that's not to say that every movie that I do, I'm going to do all those roles in, right? And
Yeah.
so, especially as an actor, I mean, not all the stories I want to tell, I'm going to be right for. Um, a lot of, I enjoy wearing a lot of hats. I think it's very fulfilling for me personally. And of course, it's also like a way to keep the budget down. And by virtue of keeping the budget down, I can create more movies, right? And so, that's great. I'd rather create more movies at a smaller budget than less movies at a larger budget. So that's part of it too. But I collaborate a lot with my producer, David, which is nice because I wear so many hats. It's great to have someone you trust to kind of be able to handle things when you're focused on the creative side of it. Um, but yeah, I mean, most of my stories are at least inspired by something that I can personally resonate with. And so that is something that I plan to continue doing. I'm not necessarily interested in, you know, telling stories that don't resonate with me personally. So yeah, I guess that's sort of like what I find the most joy and meaning and passion is to tell stories that get me excited, you know.
Cool. I just imagine that it could also be tiring wearing those so many hats.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. But I think like what I do that a lot of creative people don't is I only focus on like one project at a time, and I think that helps. So it's like I'm just doing this for like 3 years. Like I have that sort of like almost obsessiveness about it, right? And then after that's done, I do need some time where I'm not doing anything before I'm really ready to dive in again, you know. So I pace myself.
So Shayla, as an actor, do you have any desires, or maybe you've done it, to be a filmmaker as well, or write your own script?
um, I'm actually writing something right now. I do have a background in producing. I produced a little bit of film. I've used to be an art director on commercials. I've worn a lot of hats in this industry on both stage and on screen. I love working with people who tell their own stories like Michelle. And so I'm trying to get the courage to tell my own. So yeah, I do. And the short answer is yes, I do. The long answer was what I gave you before. So we'll see what happens with the script, and if I choose to wear all the hats like Michelle or not. I don't know. She
Well,
does it very well. I've got a good person to aspire to be like.
you never know until you try, right?
Right, exactly.
So my other question also is the breast milk lotion for real, or is that some figment of
Yeah.
your imagination, Michelle?
Well, I mean, breast milk lotion is real. The parties are from my imagination, but that only makes sense to me that people would sell it and maybe
Mhm.
could sell it in like a little Tupperware party situation. But yeah, I knew somebody who was telling me all about the breast milk lotion and how good it is. So I thought it was just sort of like a fun little quirky thing to put in there.
I it caught me off guard when when they started talking about it. But I love the comeback of Tommy, and he does have a point. Just it's just like having a cum lotion,
Right.
which should also be good for your face. Anyway, I don't want to go to that route. um, so one of the other things that caught me by surprise is how good you wear how good do you wear as a drag performer. You really got all the lip syncing. You got it down, and then with all the costumes, and the makeup looked wonderful too. So where did that inspiration come from, having the drag scene in the movie? And was that did you have any experience in that, or did you have to rehearse or um, research for what you have to do for that scene?
Sure, yeah. So for the inspiration, well, it's funny actually. I think on a broad level, I noticed this like later that I feel like in all of my movies, in the characters that I play, I have like one scene that's like my femme moment, right? And so in a lot of the other movies, because my character is an actor, that can come out in like those kinds of scenes, or we go to an S&M club or whatever. So I think that's kind of funny, and I think that's just coming from this subconscious place of like embracing both a masculine and feminine side to my own personal identity. So that's sort of like on the subconscious level. More consciously, there was this song that came on the radio called Fight Song that like every time came on, I'd be like, yeah, and I'd be just like singing and feeling very free. And I just had this feeling like something like this would be great in the movie of like my character who's otherwise very reserved and closed off and shut down, that she's able to just like open up and like explode with energy. So that was the initial inspiration. It took a very long time to find the right song because I wanted something just like upbeat and empowering, etc. But of course, we don't have the budget to license that song from the radio. So we found, I think, a pretty good song for that. And we hired a choreographer. We met with him once for about an hour. Neither one of us are dancers, so he was able to come up with something that would work without us being dancers. So it's like hand movements instead of feet movements, things like that, which worked out because the stage was really small. And yeah, and we had fun with it. And as I mentioned, the actor Charlie, he's done drag before. So he had all the things like the padding and the whatnot. And we had a professional drag makeup artist do his makeup, and then our regular makeup artist do my makeup. And the makeup took 3 hours, which is like supposed to take 3 hours, but that's something that was surprising for me going in, especially on me, as I'm like, why would it take 3 hours on me? But they still had to transform me in the way that it would look like drag, not just like a woman wearing makeup. So
Oh, I've done drag for Halloween or special events, not as a performer, but just to look pretty.
yeah,
um, and let me tell you, I was surprised too how long it takes. You sit there in the chair forever, and they bake this makeup on your face, and
right.
everything has to be done by layers and stuff. So it was surprising, but I whenever I tell people about those experiences, you can't believe, because they say, "Oh my God, you look pretty." Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna do this to your face for 3 hours, you better look pretty.
You better
Yeah.
look great. Yeah.
Um, the other thing that struck me in there was a scene with Lily, um, like towards uh, the end of their relationship. I imagine when she was talking to you about possibly being open or sleeping with another woman,
Mhm.
um, which was so interesting to me because that sounds like uh, just a gay couple negotiating the relationship and how they would move forward, or someone who's suddenly interested in another guy, and who's trying to get permission uh, without feeling guilty about their relationship. Um, but what what struck me as maybe funny, I don't know, is the line where you draw
Hmm.
is, the partner cannot go down on this other person, on this other
Right.
person. So is that like a thing with women?
Well, I wouldn't say, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for other people. I feel like that's the line where it's like, you could get an STD, you could bring this
Mm,
home to me. Because I think a lot of lesbian sex is relatively safe. But if you start going down on somebody, then it's like, well, now you're exchanging bodily fluids and that kind of thing. So, but
yes,
it's funny that you say like that it struck you as being funny because like, we, not always, but sometimes when it screams, it gets a little bit of a laugh, which is funny to me because otherwise that scene is so serious. But I also think it gives the
yes.
audience an opportunity to kind of maybe relieve some of that tension too, you know?
I think it's probably some nervous laughter too.
Yeah.
Depending on who's laughing. If it's women, I think it's probably more nervous laughter. But if it's guys,
Right.
it's probably, because they could relate to what's
Uh-huh.
happening on screen. Um, so Shayla, having worked with Michelle on her other projects, how different was being on the set of maybe Someday, and um, what's so different about your experience with this latest film?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that my experience with the previous two was more technical. Um, Comedy is, it's there. I'm not naturally a hilarious person. Like Michelle has this sense of humor that carries through, and I think that making sure things are funny but yet truthful, um, for me seems is a little bit more technical. Um, Whereas with a dramedy or drama, it's more organic for me and more free. So the approach there for me as an actor was different. Um, as far as working with Michelle, because of the technical, I think that I wasn't, and also just the nature of our two characters in the previous two movies were kind of at odds. I'm her ex, and I'm kind of an antagonistic sort of character who I believe is still a very good person, but she's got some swagger and some attitude going on, and so I think just naturally because of the type of character she is and her relationship with Jamie. I'm speaking about Lola and Jamie for anybody who's watched this or who's watched them. I think that kind of created more of a distance.
Mhm.
It's hard to say because there is actually a distance and maybe someday, but it's a different distance, if that makes sense. There's like, it's almost like a painful distance. Like, I'm not sure what's going on here. There's a wall, but I don't quite know how to go negotiate it. And I really care about you. And I really want to get back to who we were, or I want to help you. So I think just naturally having those two different character dynamics changed my relationship on the set, and the tone of the two pieces changed my relationship on the set. I will say that Michelle, as a filmmaker, I think has also changed, if I may say this, Michelle.
Sure.
I feel like there was much more of a grounded and like over the course of all three. And I didn't see the work on Butch Jamie, but through Heterosexual Jill, S&M Sally, and maybe Someday, I've seen like this progression of coming into your own as a filmmaker and an artist. And so that also, I think, creates more of a confidence and a comfort for the people who are on set working.
Mm.
Also, if I can say this too, I think it's been a really great thing to see there's crew that have carried through different crew members. So there's like kind of like this more of a homogenous sort of feeling when you have people who work together, continue working together. And my female empowerment got really excited when one day I looked at set and I'm like, holy cow, everybody who's working on this crew in this room. I mean, we had David, the producer, and I love David. It's not to disparage David. And I think like our sound, like, but everybody in the room at that moment was a woman, like our gaffer, director, our DP. And I was just like, this is also really cool. So that was a little side note that you didn't ask me about, but I appreciate it. So.
Does that make the workplace feel safer to you, or at least you're more comfortable? having more women on the set? Because that's becoming more of a thing now. Like, people take pride in hiring an all-female crew, or um, working with mostly women in the crew as well.
I think that's a really good question. I think that, representation matters. They always say that for a reason. If you can see other people filling positions that, I grew up in a very religion that was based on patriarchal authority. So for me to see women in positions of authority does make me feel more empowered to say something or explore something that I might feel less inclined to. I also think it's really important to have all sorts of people. Like, I do appreciate men on a set, but I don't appreciate only men on a set. So I think, yes, I'm safer. Yes, it feels safer. Yeah,
Yeah,
I do like seeing more women
it's
in positions of power.
it's it's just good for the industry and for everyone else
Mhm.
to see that growth and development in the industry, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. And from your response, I think this is you kind of nailed what I was trying to do with my earlier question to Michelle about having, taking on all the hats, producing, writing, and directing. For all her other films, like, it's like she's lived it, and she's started to be more comfortable with it. But you kind of nailed it on the head when you said that she's grown into that role. She's a different um, filmmaker, from your experience from before. Um, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So, Michelle, does this mean that we have to wait another 3 years for a new film from you? And would you be
Yeah.
writing another part for Shayla in the new film?
Michelle's so done with me by now.
I mean, realistically, for a narrative film, it probably will be a while. The project that I'm working on next is going to be a docu-series about non-binary identities and experiences. And so my partner and I are in pre-production on it now, and I'm hoping in the next few months, as we have time, we'll be able to start shooting, and we're planning to shoot that next year. So that's going to be the next project that comes out. And while that's happening, I'm gonna work on a script or whatever. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a while before the next narrative features comes out.
But at least you're one of the more dependable female filmma- filmmakers out there that keep trying to put out the female narratives out there. Um, is there, like, what do you think about attracting the female audience to your stories? Because in my experience as a programmer, I feel like it's very difficult to get the female audience to come out.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that they don't watch necessarily. Maybe they prefer to watch things at home, but and
Hmm.
this is not just something that happens in Rochester or at ImageOut. This is something that happens in a lot of cities,
Hmm.
big and small, except maybe San Francisco. That I feel like it's the women audience. It's much more difficult to please. Are you worried about that when you're writing your script?
I mean, I'm not necessarily worried about it because ultimately those are the stories I want to tell. But it is challenging. I mean, there is. I mean, if you, I think sometimes like, oh, if I were to do a gay male feature, I think I would have a much bigger audience. It just is. I think they go out more, they spend more money. Also statistically, there's more gay men than there are lesbians, but if you include bisexual women, they equal out. But a lot of bisexual women, or some of them, aren't necessarily participating in queer culture as fervently as the gay men and the lesbians are. So if you look at the people that are participating in queer culture that are female, I think you have a smaller percentage than with men. So it can be challenging, and so it's challenging because of course the audience is related to the financial side, and the financial side is related to how much content you can produce and at what level you can produce that content. So, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it's like that's not going to necessarily change the stories that I tell, because those are the stories I want to tell, and I work to get them out there. And I do also have a male audience, and especially with this new film, I mean, the straight people that have seen it have really resonated with it, and so obviously lesbians are the core audience, and queer women are the core audience. But then the hope is that it'll ripple out and it'll find, a broader audience from there to help sustain, future projects.
Well, I just want to congratulate you for the new film. Maybe someday, and you have proven to yourself that you can do beyond just straight comedy. I mean, not straight comedy, queer comedy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
just all comedy. You can infuse it with drama, or the film may be more dramatic. So I think you've proven to yourself with this film that you can do that and succeed. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Um, and I want to thank both of you for joining us for this chat, and spending your time with Image Out. And we hope to see you soon. Um, well, maybe not 3 years, but this docu series sounds promising that it will be a shorter interval this time.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Any parting words for our audience?
I just, I hope they enjoy the movie, and I hope they keep in touch with us on social media. You can find us and you can keep updated about where the movie's going to go and when it's going to be released and things like that.
And Shayla?
I just want people to keep telling their stories. So I encourage anybody who out there who's an artist of any stripe, please tell your stories, get them out there. As I said before, representation matters. And it's been really wonderful being a part of films who the lead is a non-binary. So please tell your stories. Don't be frustrated by the machine. There's ways to get them out there.
Well, thanks once again, and goodbye.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Bye.